We're back in the United States of America. I'm your host, Matthew B. Stein. The Procrastinated Podcast is back on track, back on a normal schedule, back in our normal location. And I am back from Amsterdam. The trip was very fruitful. It was almost exactly what I wanted. I got almost exactly what I wanted out of it. And I learned a couple things, have a couple takeaways, some thoughts I had along the way. And that's what this episode is going to be all about. I learned a couple things along the way, from the fact that Europe is so much better than US, but not that different really. Traveling is all about experience, but really the people are what matter most. Dutch artists are really woke. Dutchies are very welcoming, but also maybe it's changing a little bit. Drugs and sex aren't the devil like we like to make them out to be in America. Also, just the word recalibration. I'll explain more later in the episode. Europe is better than America, but not really that different. What do I mean by this? So, I just spent 10 days in Amsterdam. In Amsterdam, Netherlands, the capital of the Netherlands, I believe. A beautiful city, a very compact city. A city that actually has a lower, according to Google, has a lower population than Indianapolis, Indiana, believe it or not. The energy is something that I very much noticed in Amsterdam. The energy may be a European energy, it may just be Amsterdam, I'm not sure. But it is so much different and so much so much better. And I wish it's something that America would adopt. In America, it feels like we so often get caught up in go, and never really take time to slow down and chill out. It's always anxiety. It feels like America's sort of a anxiety-built society. Sounds like I'm already being very prophetic, and I'm not trying to be, but I'm trying to express this in the best way possible. So I recognize I was on vacation while I was there, so I wasn't working a job or really going place to place other than to see the sights. So maybe it's a little different than how life actually is there, but from my experience, they just like to take things a lot slower. There are cafes all over the place, just like nice little cafes that serve food, coffee, beer, whatever you might want. They have them just all over the place. And you can stop in at one, have a drink or two, just chill, soak up the sun, do some people watching, and then move along with your day. Or stay there all day and drink all day, and they don't really care. Whereas in America, if you were to sit down somewhere and take your seat and take your time, it would eventually get to this point where the waiter keeps asking you what's going on. Eventually, maybe they'll just bring you your check and just place it on your table without saying anything, because they want you to move on and get out of their way so they can give the table to somebody else. That is something I never experienced in Amsterdam. It's not so much about move, get on to the next place. It's a lot more about take your time. We'll get to you when we're ready. You can come to us when you're ready as well. But no hurry, no sweat. Don't worry about it, big man. Also, that may have been a big factor because in America, we pay people as little as we possibly can, as little as we can possibly get away with. That is not the way it goes in Amsterdam. They pay people a livable wage, believe it or not. They pay people, even waitresses and waiters, they pay them a livable wage so they can live in an expensive city like Amsterdam comfortably on just a waiter's salary. Wild, isn't it? Isn't it crazy? A lot of people there seemed a lot happier because of that. There was not, like I said, there's not much this rush. There were people in a rush, obviously, because people have a place to be, but there wasn't really as much hustle and bustle. There wasn't an anxiety about the city. There wasn't as tense, it didn't seem. And maybe that's just the culture they live in, but we need to learn something from that. History also is another thing that they have in common with us. We have a storied but not very long history here in America. In Europe, they have a much longer history, much more storied potentially, although we've grown a lot faster just because of our pure size. Anyways, we heard a lot about this golden generation of the Dutch Empire. In the 17th century, they were going through what they called their golden era. Now, if you were to take a wild guess about what this golden era is about, there's a good chance you probably land on the correct answer in a couple guesses or so. If you think about maybe perhaps a company called the Dutch East Indies Company or the Dutch West Indies Company. You may have heard these names before, and that is because they were in charge of and sort of led the Dutch Empire and the growth of the Dutch Empire in the 17th century, but mainly only because of one thing and one main export/import/good, and that was the always unfortunately famous slavery. They do a similar thing to us here in America. They talk about the history, talk about how great it is, how they've built up this empire, this name, this record, this oh we're great kind of dealio. But then they very quickly gloss over the gross underbelly of that fame. The Dutch East Indies Company really kind of led the slavery charge. They made so much money, and a disgusting amount of money off of slavery, and really pushed the Dutch Empire into the next phase, really into the future in a lot of ways. But we didn't hear much about that. We heard a little bit about that and about how it's not talked about much, but it just reminded me a lot of America. We like to talk about the great and how good things are, but there are terrible things that we have done without caution, without regret, without any hesitation, but we just ignore it. We just, Look at all these goods we got. Look at all this gold we have stacked up. Look at all this money, baby. We got stacks. Who cares how we got it? We got stacks. So that was another similarity I noticed between the two. Public transport is another thing they do so much better than us as well. Public transport is buttery smooth there, baby. We could get anywhere we wanted to very easily, very quickly. You could take a tram, you could take a bus, you could take an Uber, you could take a subway. You could do about whatever you wanted, or you could rent a bike and just get around that way, which is what a lot of people do there, because it's a rather compact city. I just wish we invested more money in public transport in America, to be honest, because like here at Butler, there's a Butler bubble. People get stuck here on campus because it sort of seems hard to get off campus and go elsewhere. But if there's public transport that was much better built in and much more accessible and much easier to use, it wouldn't seem that way. We would have more mixing, more movement, more accessibility, and I think it just might make our lives better. Maybe I haven't ventured into the American travel transport system that much, but in Amsterdam, it's a beautiful thing. Diversity is another. Now, in America, we like to call ourselves, especially in places like New York and LA and Chicago or wherever, we like to call ourselves the melting pot. That we have these all diverse people from all different walks of life all over the place. They come together in our cities, and it's a great thing. It's this whole community, yada, yada, yada. In Amsterdam, they were truly diverse. Every single person most every person I ran into spoke Dutch, but they also spoke English. I almost said American. Here in America, I really only confidently speak one language, and that is English. I would say I can survive in Spain, but only barely. And as the moments go by, I'm losing more and more of the Spanish that I learned. Whereas most every person I ran into in the Netherlands either spoke at least Dutch and English, if not French, German, Spanish, whatever else. Everybody spoke, which is kind of a European thing in general because they're so close together, but they all spoke many different languages, and they showed true diversity. Many different cultures represented in the area, from Asian people to Southeast Asian, to Western European, Eastern European, American, South American, Hispanic, whatever you want, they kind of had it, and you could just bump into them walking around. You could spark up a conversation because everybody speaks a different language there, and all work in harmony. Well, maybe not harmony, but they all work together and make this beautiful cultural mosaic that the US likes to claim, but I think Amsterdam had a much more true example of it than what we have here. Traveling is very much about gaining experiences, but it's much more about learning from others' experiences. Let me explain. So on my trip, I bumped into a few locals, a few foreigners, and that was when I felt like I really learned the most on my trip. I really gained the most, and those are the moments I cherish the most as well. Because I'm from America, I'm from Indiana, I'm from a place that speaks largely English, dare I say American, because that's really what it is. It's not even really English anymore. I think they're somewhat separate. Anyways, some people might speak a little bit of Spanish, but we're all kind of from the same era. We all have a somewhat relatable experience here in the Midwest, just the picturesque white America, growing up in a humble home with crops and farms and white people all around, and hooray, a hoopla, county fairs, fried food, fat people, all that good stuff. But when you meet people that don't come from those same walks of life and see the same things you saw growing up, you really see a lot more about what there is to experience, what there is to going on, what there is to learn from, what there is happening around the world that is so much infinitely more valuable than just going on traveling and experiencing things. There's a difference between traveling, I think, and experiencing. Traveling is great. I love traveling. I mean, everybody, when they talk about traveling, they think, oh, it's my hobby. It's what I love to do. It's really not that easy to do because it costs money, but it's so valuable. When I talked with those around me, that was when I truly got the most out of my trip. And it's not even like I learned anything really that groundbreaking. I never really, like, my mind wasn't really blown by any of the things that I was told. It was just connecting with somebody that comes from a different place as you, that doesn't know the same things as you, that knows maybe everything different than you and a lot of things that you don't know. And just engaging with them through casual conversation rather than like a set-up meeting kind of thing, really like where you just kind of bump into each other. And it seems much more genuine and much more pure and much more, how you say, natural, maybe? That's kind of the purest form of human interaction, at least that I've experienced in my life, and I love it. I love it. I love it. I mean, that's what most people would say, but I can't express it enough. Traveling is about gaining new experiences and seeing new things, but to really get the most out of those new experiences, you have to learn about other experiences during that time, if you get what I'm saying. Those shared experiences really pull out the best in people, and there are many ways to share a different experience, from sports to drinks, to bevs, to just walking around, to even potentially some less sacred things, we'll say. Like when I met my boy Pedro, I was walking back into my hostel, he was walking out, he bumped into me and he said, "Hey, you got any wraps for smoking marijuana?" And I said, "No, I don't." He asked me, "But do you have a lighter?" And I said, "I do. I could help you out there. Just hang out 1 second." And then I came back down, I met with my buddy Pedro, and we had a grand old time, and I made a genuine friend on the trip, and a guy that really kind of motivated me a little bit. And we talked all about how he wants to make movies and I make videos, and I see this for myself, he sees that for himself, and how, oh man, we're just going to make it happen. We're just going to strong arm the world and we're going to make it happen. And had I not been in Amsterdam and been open to the experiences around me and receptive to him bumping into me and saying hello, I wouldn't have learned any of that. I wouldn't have got that motivation. I would have got that reinforcement, that confidence boost from talking to him. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say. Those moments are where you get the most out of spreading your wings and looking beyond what you already know. Dutch artists. They are so much more woke than us here in America. While we love our cancel culture and making a bigger deal out of things than they need to be, and causing controversy that doesn't need to exist, and canceling and getting rid of people that may have just done one thing wrong, bad thing back in the day, Dutch people, or at least Dutch artists, they are woke, bro. They are woke, dog. They're like, so my eyes are open this wide. This is where I see. I'm awake right now. I am how you would say woke. I am awake. I am not asleep. I'm seeing what's ahead of me. But Dutch artists, somehow they get their eyes to open even wider, and they see things differently. It's sort of hard for me to explain this because I didn't really take that many great pictures of the art exhibits we went through, but there was this one in particular which was kind of more a private museum. It was a free museum, luckily. There was a restaurant above it as well. But it was all about like the torture of society, the tear down of society, about how we're burning the ground down with all of our hatred and bad energy and protesting, and we're causing the demise of society if we would just sit and listen to each other and stop trying to cancel everybody and stir up this turmoil and fuel this anger in society, that we could get along And if we can't stay on this certain path, we're gonna end up in a dystopian future with bugs and mud and water and buildings falling down and everything wrong, making forks and knives out of sticks and rocks. Go back to the old ages where things weren't as glamorous, and we really go back in time because of all this turmoil that we're creating in the present day, and how it really tears us down as a society and tears us apart as people. They're very woke. It was an experience for sure. It clearly elicited some response out of me, so I guess it worked, but it was just kind of weird, bro. It was just kind of weird, though, dude. It was a weird kind of thing. And there were, like, these big exhibits of this one guy who had his whole floor to himself in this museum about photo and video. And it was all about how he is expressing himself through art. And I love art. Some might say this podcast is art. I created it out of thin air. It's an expression of who I am as a person, and I put it out into the world. And that's kind of what art is. But it takes different forms. There was a video in this exhibit that I'm talking about. Unfortunately, I don't have a video of the video, but there's a video that this guy was making, and he walked out of his house, of somewhat of an apartment complex, and there was an orchestra playing in front of his door on either side of the entrance along the sidewalk. And as he walked out, he took a couple steps forward, and the orchestra started playing and swelling this music, this lovely classical music. You know what orchestra sounds like. And as they started playing, this crane slowly started rising and pulling on his strings on his back until he was slowly lifted off the ground and just kept slowly sliding and gliding into the sky, up and up. As the music kept going on, he just, almost as a god figure, he created himself to be a Christ-like figure of sorts. And it was all about how he was in a bike accident and he got very severely injured and went into a coma for a few days, but was able to come back out of the coma, heal himself, get out of there, and walk and go about his life when it was expected that he would not be able to do so. The exhibit claimed that because of his life and because of the way he grew up and how he treated himself and how he took care of himself, that he naturally built himself up to be one of the only people in the world that could possibly be resilient enough to come back from this bike crash and get back on his feet and move forward, when in reality, he's probably just some guy who got in some bike accident like a bunch of other people do in Europe. And in due time, and with the right rehab and the right patience, he was able to heal himself and come back. But the way he expressed it and made it sound like this a passionate thing, it was just unnecessary, kind of. There's another video in that same exhibit where he was just sitting in this little cabin on the San Andreas Fault. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's in California. It could potentially be the end of the world as we know it. It's kind of based on 2012, the movie. It could cause a massive earthquake. It's the edge of two tectonic plates. Anyways, part of this exhibit, he was sitting in a cabin on the San Andreas Fault just waiting for an earthquake to happen. That's it. Just waiting for an earthquake to happen. Just sitting in the cabin, waiting. But while these Dutch artists are all this woke and so accepting and expressing these things and making profound statements with their art, real Dutch people are forcing out those things that make them so accepting and so woke and so different than the people around them. So it's this weird crossroads of things, of Amsterdam being this welcoming, loving city, because it really is that, but also being this changing, aging city. It almost seems like they're getting bored of being this accepting, loving city that accepts gay people for who they are, and sex for what it is, and drugs for a thing to be enjoyed. It seems like they're kind of getting tired of that and realizing maybe we should just have everybody be kind of the same and be boring and behave the way we want them to. Maybe we shouldn't allow all of this different kind of ideas and thoughts and open dialogue. Furthering on this point, drugs and sex aren't the devil. In America, we like to make drugs and sex out like they are at least this is how I picture it, as they are terrible things and bad and plague our society. Whereas in Amsterdam, they have things like the red light district that house many prostitutes that are just standing at windows, waving at people as they walk by, trying to get them in to make a buck or two off some physical affection. They also have coffee shops all over the place. Now, these coffee shops are not like your traditional coffee shops. They are unique in the fact that they sell marijuana. So, openly available on the streets are sex that you can have basically at any time and drugs that you can do basically at any time. That is so different from America. Not only do we have neither of those things in America, we also advertise prescription medicines, which is illegal in the Netherlands, which is something that I didn't realize that we do so often, but we love it. And it kind of grosses me out, to be honest. Drugs and sex aren't that bad. I mean, they're bad, and they're things to be aware of and be knowledgeable about and understand, but they aren't inherently the bad things in our society. The red light district, for example, I mentioned they want to move it and they want to push it out of the community it's into because it's right in the central of Amsterdam, to be honest. They're trying to move it somewhere else where it's out of the way and it's less in the center of everything, less in the spotlight, just because it's kind of like this dark spot of their community that they don't love as much, or at least the locals don't love as much. But if you ask most any of the people, especially the sex workers, they would strongly oppose this idea as it's how they make their livelihood, and it does other good things. Like I said, it reinforces the economy. It brings people to Amsterdam. It brings money to Amsterdam. While it's not so glamorous, it doesn't mean it's inherently bad. In fact, they like to say that the red light district is what brings the crime to the area. It's what causes the problems. But that's not the case. It's really the things around the red light district that cause the problems. I spent a night or two in the red light district. Not spent a night, but I was there a night or two in the red light district. And the ladies that are waving through the window, they're very attractive. They say hello. They try and coax you in. I did not partake in any of their activities. Kind of unfortunately. I would have liked to a little bit just to experience it. But also, clearly, I have hesitations with it. Anyways. They were not the ones doing the crime. It's the people around the area that are poaching on the tourists and the peoples in the area that are causing the crime. I will confidently say that while I was there in Amsterdam, I got asked to do cocaine at least 3 to 5 times. That is 3 to 5 times more that I've been asked than the whole entire previous years of my life. So it's clear to see that the women, they never got me in any trouble or tried to get me in any trouble. They were just trying to get my money. But these people asking me to do cocaine were also trying to just get my money. But it's an illegal drug. It's something that is not legal there. And those are the people that are really trying to, they're stirring up the turmoil, possibly maybe robbing people, doing those other very seedy, bad things that shouldn't exist and should be regulated. But drugs and sex aren't the devil like we make them out to be. And media kind of control the world. Also, withholding things like drugs, sex, and alcohol only increases the hysteria or want for them. In Amsterdam, coffee shops and weed are readily available. But I asked my tour guide how many people really take part in that. And he said, not very many, less than 10 to 20% of the population. And it's really only younger people and tourists, which isn't surprising. Here in America, the drinking age is 21. So people here drink underage and they get in trouble for it. And they can often start problems with drugs and alcohol because there's this weird romantic idea about things that are withheld from us that we like to have them because we feel good. It feels bad. It feels against the rules. We're sticking it to the man, you know? But if you were to remove those restrictions and sort of open things up, open the conversation about them, make things more readily available and not make them as difficult to get or as stigmatized or as deemed bad, you know? Make them more casual. I think we might be surprised at really by how things might change and how the opinion and use of them might change. Because a lot of people in Amsterdam don't really smoke weed, despite the fact that it's basically on every single corner in the city. I'm going to finish this episode out with one last word. Recalibration. So this means a number of things to me, but I'll start off with the biggest thing and what it really taught me, or why I chose this word to somewhat define this trip. I went to Amsterdam, and Amsterdam was a city that I've been wanting to go to for a while. It's a place that I have heard about, obviously, and I've wanted to experience just because I know about the culture, or I've heard about the culture and the canals and the way the city looks and all the glorious things that it has and how nice it is. And I just wanted to see what it was like. And that's what I wanted for myself. And I got that. I went on this trip. I spent 10 days in Amsterdam. And I got almost exactly what I wanted to out of it. I got to learn from other people. I got to see new things that I hadn't seen before. I got to hear things that I hadn't heard before. And I got to get some sort of reality check. And it made me realize that Going forward, I graduate here in 2 months. If there's something I want for myself, or something I envision myself, or some place I envision myself to live, I should go for it. And I should stick to what I want to do. Because I wanted to go to Amsterdam. I wanted to have the experiences that I had. And when I had them, I feel like I grew as a person. I feel like I benefited from that experience fundamentally. And I feel like I'd only be doing myself a disservice by not following through with that same idea in the future as I graduate and getting the job I want to and focusing down the road and giving myself the life that I think I want to have. Because if you're not doing your best to give you the things that you want to have, then what are you really doing? You're kind of just wasting your time, it seems. Why not chase what you want? And it doesn't have to be full-on chase either. You don't have to really run after everything. You kind of just take your time and get there. But you just have to stay the course. You have to stay online. Stay in the right direction. And they will come to you. And that's really what this trip kind of gave me. Is that perspective to think, it'll come. It will come. I don't need to run after it. I will catch up to it eventually, just sticking on the path of life. It will come. You have to be patient, be open, keep your chin up, keep your eyes and mind open to experiences and looking and hearing around you. And if you do that and you pay attention to what's going on around you and you keep your eyes peeled to what's going on around you, then everything will be okay. Opportunities will come your way. You might miss one or two, but if you stay the course, you stay on your path, they will likely come back to you. And one final thing I learned from being in Amsterdam. One, I can't dress for shit. I like to think I'm a stylish man. I can put fits together. I can dress better than the average man. But compared to the Dutchies, I don't know shit, dog. They are the most fresh people I've ever seen in my life. Every other person on the street was wearing a nice fit, pieced something together, all these different patterns and layers and colors and textures and so good. So with that, express yourself however you might want to, whether it's with your clothes, with your voice, with your behavior. Do it however you might want to. You can express yourself however you want to. You can dress yourself however you want to. And you can behave within reason however you want to. And don't give up on that, because I try so hard to be Matthew Stein. I try so hard to be my own individual, my unique person. And that gives me power. That gives me life. That gives me energy. That gives me... I love that about myself. I love that about the world. I love that I'm able to do that. And Amsterdam sort of reinforced that I can express myself however I want to, as long as I do the right things and I make the right decisions at the right times. Things will be okay. You can stick to your guns and things will work themselves out. And you also don't have to sprint to the finish line, because sprinting to the finish line only makes time go faster and make your heart rate pick up faster and make your body and brain move faster when it doesn't really need to. You can do the run walk instead of the mile. You can run for 45 minutes and walk for 15. You can break it up. You can change your pace. You don't have to always be sprinting. And that's something that I really hope I hold on to in the coming weeks, in the coming months, in the coming years, and in the future. Because that's truly important. And this trip gave me a really solid recalibration. I feel a lot more at peace with where I'm at. Before break, I was all stressed and worried about everything, basically. But now, it's okay. I gotta just, in the coming weeks, apply to jobs that I want to, look at places I want to live, and I'll figure it out. And it'll be alright. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of the Procrastinated Podcast. I have been your host, Matthew B. Stein. You have been fantastic, as always. And I'll see you in next week's episode of the Procrastinated Podcast. Episode 82 is in the books. Peace.